All right, let's dive into an idea that affects pretty much every business owner out there, especially when they think things are running smoothly. We're talking about the incredible value of a third pair of eyes.
So, let me just ask you this straight up. Is your business quietly leaking money? And look, that's a tough question, right? Because for most people, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. The leaks, well, they're usually invisible.
And that's really the key. These money leaks don't show up with a big flashing alarm bell. They're sneaky. They disguise themselves as just normal, everyday stuff. The normal rework, the normal delays, all those little frictions we just start to accept as the cost of doing business. So if this stuff is happening all the time, why don't more leaders bring in some outside help to spot it? Well, it turns out there's this huge psychological barrier that gets in the way. Let's call it the wall of resistance.
And here's what's so interesting. This resistance, it's almost never about the practical stuff, like the budget or not having enough time. Nope, the real roadblocks are way more personal. It all comes down to two things: fear and ego.
First up, there's the fear of exposing a weakness. Who wants an outsider to come in, pop the hood on your operations, and find all the things that aren't working as perfectly as you thought they were?
The second barrier is also about fear, but it's a different kind. It's the fear of giving up authority. If you've built your business from the ground up, letting someone else come in and poke around can really feel like you're losing control, like you're admitting you don't have it all figured out. And finally, of course, there's the ego. It's that voice in your head that says, hey, I built this thing, nobody understands this business better than I do. And look, that's a powerful belief, but it can also be a massive blind spot.
So this combination of fear and ego, it feeds right into a cognitive bias that can trip up even the smartest leaders. It's a concept called familiarity blindness.
So what is familiarity blindness? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what happens when you see something so often that you stop really seeing it. In business, this means all those little daily inefficiencies, the workarounds, the repeated mistakes, they just become part of the background noise. They become invisible.
And let's be super clear here, this has nothing to do with how good you are at your job. There's a perfect quote that sums this up. Familiarity blinds even the most competent leaders. You can be absolutely fantastic and still be unable to see the problems right under your nose. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. The huge difference in perspective. An insider sees a recurring problem and thinks, that's just part of the job. But an outsider looks at the exact same thing and asks, okay, what's the root cause here that we can actually fix? An insider says, well, that's the way it's always been done. While an outsider sees that and thinks, bingo, there's a huge opportunity for improvement right there. Okay, so how in the world do you fight something like familiarity blindness? Well, you bring in the solution, the objective outsider. That's our third pair of eyes.
So what makes this outsider so valuable? Well, for starters, they bring objectivity, not ego. They're not tangled up in your company's history or office politics. They also see your processes for what they actually are, not what you believe them to be. And maybe the most powerful thing they do is ask the simple questions that insiders stopped asking years ago. Questions like, hey, why do you do it this way?
But, and this is a big but, just bringing someone in isn't a magic fix. It's only half the battle. For any of this to actually work, there is one single, absolutely non-negotiable condition for success.
Just one, but it changes everything.
So what is it? What's this one crucial thing that determines whether an external review succeeds or just completely fails? It all comes down to this: the openness to accept the findings. I'm not just talking about hearing them or nodding along in a meeting. I mean a genuine willingness to accept what that person finds.
Because without that openness, the entire process just collapses. An incredibly accurate analysis becomes totally useless. Those brilliant insights that could save you money, they just turn into arguments. You present hard evidence, and you're met with denial. And in the end, the business just keeps right on leaking money.
So this brings us to one last really important question. We've talked a lot about the fear of bringing someone in, but let's flip that. What's the real risk here? There's a really painful irony in all of this. Businesses often reject outside help because they're trying to protect themselves. But that very decision, that lack of scrutiny, is exactly what allows the quiet losses to continue, completely unchecked.
So when you really get down to it, the big risk isn't about letting someone from the outside take a look. That's not the dangerous part. No, the real risk, the greatest danger, is continuing to operate blind while telling yourself that everything is fantastic. That is the single most dangerous position for any business to be in.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty challenging thought. For any leader who feels that resistance, that hesitation to get an outside opinion, you just have to ask yourself one simple question. What are you really afraid of seeing?